Hi guys, I hope you can hear me. I feel I should be audible. So today we are going to get done with around 20 parajumble questions. Okay. So it will be a real-time solving so that you can see the logic and understand. Pardon my voice. It's a bit husky today because I have cold. So guys, before we start, parajumbling is a skill, right? There will be two questions of parajumbles in the cat. And if you want to get those 6 marks from this day till the cat day, you should do at least 5, 7 questions every day. That's kind of non-negotiable. Okay. Alrighty. So if I talk about this first question that you all have in front of your screen, I'm sure. Let us solve this. I suspect that of all the species that trigger impassioned responses among bird watchers, this is the bird least known to the British public. Now, if I talk about this particular statement, it's a very personal statement, starts with I, right? So author is giving his own opinion. And he's also saying two things here, that of all the species that trigger impassioned responses among bird watchers, this, here is your pronoun, is the bird least known to the British public. So it's very unpopular amongst British public, yet it is extremely popular among bird watchers. This idea you have to understand from here. Okay. Now, if I talk about a moment. If I talk about the next sentence, for the 10th time this spring, I have come here to catch sight of migrating ring ouzels. Now, again, we have an I here. We have two I's here, right? Writing 108 years ago, W.H. Hudson described finding 40 to 50 breeding pairs near this spot. So, what can you say from here? What should be my starting line? Is the first question, right? Let me join it from my phone as well. The session, so that I can look at your comments. So my starting line over here definitely cannot be 3. Definitely cannot be 4, 5, or 6 because they have got context behind it, right? So either it is 1 or it is 2. And since one has this, your answer is 2. The first line is 2. So for the 10th time this spring, I have come here to catch sight of migrating ring ouzels. It also introduces the bird in a way, right? Now, after that, can you go for straight away 1? I suspect that of all species because I looks good like a pair. What about after this, after 2, 1? So, if you look at option 4, the simplest explanation for both these responses. Now, when I talk about 1 and 3, you have to identify, 1 and 4, you have to identify that they're mandatory pairs. How? Because 4 talks about these responses, right? And 1 talks about responses. Now you have to identify how there are 2 responses. One is being to the British public, the other is bird watcher, as I explained in the very beginning, right? So 1, 4 is your mandatory pair. So 2, 1, 4 is something that you have gotten so far, right? Now, if I talk about fourth, if I talk about third, where to put that one? So W.H. Hudson described around writing 108 years ago, W.H. Hudson described finding 40 to 50 breeding pairs near this spot. right? And today it is hard to find more than one. Or today there are 15,000 spread thinly from northern Scotland to Cornwall. This is a very important question. After 2, 1, 4, and 3, what would you do? Right? So 2, 1, 4, 5, 3, 6 is your correct answer. So why is it 5, 3, 6 is the question? Right? So 3 and 6 is a mandatory pair, as you can see. Writing 108 years ago, W.H. Hudson described finding 40 to 50 breeding pairs near this spot. And today it's hard to find more than one because we are talking about breeding sites of birds here. Correct. And if I talk about 4 and 5, this looks like a good mandatory pair. Why? So ring ouzels are wild upland loners that are getting scarcer almost annually. Now, why are they getting scarcer almost annually? The explanation of that is in 5. Today there are 15,000 spread thinly from, right? So that's your answer. Let's go for the next one. I will give you some time on this one to solve. Then we will discuss the answer. Go ahead. Okay. So we have got over here 4-statement parajumble. A 4-statement parajumble or a 5-statement parajumble, both of them are probable in your exam. Remember that. Okay. So what can be my first line? Kwasi Kwarteng, the energy minister, said that he expects the government to set out how it plans to create a successor to the Green Investment Bank in the not too distant future. So we have been introduced a concept, Green Investment Bank, right? And we have a political dialogue happening between the energy minister and who's called Kwasi Kwarteng and the government. So if I talk about fourth statement number 4, it has got the word move, the move. The article makes something very specific. So it cannot be my starter, right? Now the government, I must have been talking about a particular government, cannot be my starter. At a digital event hosted by climate, this might be my starter. The minister, but you have to read further. At a digital event hosted by Climate Campaign Group, UK 100 on Monday, the minister said it is no secret. The minister. That means I have already named the minister. So first you name and then you say the minister like that, right? So we have first as our first line. Now what would you say is our next sentence here? Kwasi Kwarteng, the energy minister, said that he expects to create a successor, a new green investment bank, right? Now, can I call that the move, as you can see in option 4, the move to rebuild a new green lender, right? And green investment bank, green lender matches, right? So amid growing calls, blah, blah, blah. Now, after 1, 4, what will you do? Now, whether you take 2 or 3 as the ender is the question, right? Which one is the ender? So let's look at 2. At a digital event hosted by Climate Campaign Group, UK 100 on Monday, the minister said it is no secret that there is an ongoing debate within the government, right, about how we can in effect create the Green Investment Bank 2.0. So this looks like a very good conclusion. What about option 3? The government sold the UK's original Green Investment Bank to Australian bank Macquarie in 2017, only 5 years after it was formed, in a controversial deal dubbed deeply regrettable and politically dubious by critics of the sale. Interesting. What do you think? Guys, comment if you are there. See, one logic is 2 is looking like a very good ender. Why I will tell you. Because the minister, instead of saying him or her, you are using the word the minister. Correct? So 1, 2 is not a very good pair here. Because if you want to say 1, 2, then you will have to say he. Use a pronoun instead of the minister. Right? So now the entire story, my initial ordering is 1, 4, 3, 2. Now, what is the story happening here? Is the question, right? So there is a green investment bank kind of proposal. The move is coming from amidst climate campaigners, economists, and academics to invest in green infrastructure. The government sold the UK's original, the previous one, original green investment bank to Australian bank, right? So this is kind of talking about the old one. And then 2 is a very good conclusion over here. So that's how we will move on with this particular question, right? So here we have the next question. Go for this. This is a wonderful question. It's about similarities of elephant and humans. What looks like our first line over here? So if I talk about similarities in the sentences, what kind of similarities do you see? Okay. Wood Spice Mamba is saying fourth is the first line. So Wood Spice, let's see. We get a feeling of well-being when we run our fingers over the rough skin of both creatures. Now, both creatures, can it give us our first line? We are talking about some creatures, right? Isn't it? Wood Spice. What can be my first line? Think more. So in option 4, we have both the word. Therefore, it cannot be our starter. Right? We are solving para-jumbles, not odd one out. I hope that part is clear. Right? So if I talk about certain similarities, pattern identification in the very beginning, how should the pattern be identified? Right? Look at option 1. That famous elephant memory is also found in trees, and both communicate in. So that famous elephant memory almost looks like some sort of an idea is following, right? So next idea, why cannot we communicate with trees the same way we communicate with, say, elephants? A second looks like a really good starter, isn't it? So why does second look like a good starter? Because it's a question, open-ended question, which leaves certain answers to be arrived at, right? So second is your first line. Then you have to come to your options. I mean, then you have to try to answer this question. Correct? Now, what kind of answers you have? 2 is the first line. It's pretty clear. Right? That's a general open-ended question. So you can go for, after this, let's say 5, right? Both live in social groups and look after not only their young ones, but also their elders. So we are talking about some sort of a similarity between them. Even 4 and 3, 4 and 1 are similarities, by the way. Okay. Because 1 says elephant memory, which is similar in elephant and humans, and 4 says how we feel when we touch both of them. That is also some. But the point here is, if you look at option 1 and option 4, it both of them have the word we. Option 1 has got we did not even recognize at first. I hope it's seen, right? And option 4, we get a feeling. So this we commonality or a generalization combines 1, 4 very well as examples. 5 kind of does not have we. It's a general take. So it's pretty clear that 1, 4 is a pair. 5, you can say it comes afterwards, after 2. So 2, 5, 1, 4. You have this much. Now, where is 3? 3 is expansion on the communication, right? So trees communicate through their interconnected root systems, and elephants communicate using low frequency rumbling, which we can hear, right? So it is about the communication. So immediately after 2, you can take 3 because both of them are carrying forward the communication theme, correct? So 2 and 3 communication, 5 transition to similarities, then 1, 4 similarities. So what does our this become? Just a moment. The answer is 2, 5, 1, 3. Did we arrive at that? 2, 5, 1, 3, 4. Perfect. All right. So let us move on to the next one. All right. Read this, guys. Go ahead. Cataclysmic means what? Exceptionally disastrous. So what can be my first line is the first question. If I talk about similarities, 1 and 4 have the words cataclysmic, correct? Now, that kind of looks like a paired thing, but let's talk about the idea that is being said in 1 and 4. Fourth is saying a cataclysmic day for 3 major oil companies in which investors rebelled over climate fears and a court ordered fossil fuel emissions to be slashed has sparked hope among campaigners, investors, lawyers, and academics who said the historic decisions marked a turning point in efforts to tackle the climate crisis. So basically, activists have gotten a major win over the oil companies as per 4, right? And one kind of looks like the statement, direct statement. See, it may be the most cataclysmic day so far for the fossil fuel industry, said the climate campaigner and the author Bill McKibben. So 1 and 4 are kind of tied, but are they each after each other is the question. So let's look at option 2. A tiny activist investor group simultaneously won 2 places on ExxonMobil's board, and Chevron's management was defeated when investors voted in favor of forcing the group to cut its carbon emissions. So you can see that this also is talking about a win. Win for whom? The environmentalist, activist, tiny activist investor group, right? And what about option 3? A Dutch court on Wednesday ordered Shell to cut carbon emissions from its oil and gas by 45% by 2030. This is also the same example. So this is basically giving you the judgments that are winning for the activists, right? Chevron is second on the list of fossil fuel firms with the biggest cumulative carbon emissions. So ExxonMobil is the third and Shell is the sixth. So this is giving you how the ExxonMobil is the worst of them all, right? So this is tricky. Now, which one to take first, which one to take last is the question. What would you go for in the first sentence? Yes, anybody? The most major broad idea in this entire scheme of things. First, you start with broad. When it's a list of examples, always remember. You start with broad, go to the narrow. Okay. The most broad idea is option 4, right? Because it talks about 3 major oil companies. It talks about the decisions. Perfect. Wood Spice Mamba. Wonderful. So fourth is your major main idea from which you will like narrow down now. What can you go afterwards after 4? Now, one thing is pretty clear. If you look at 3 and 2, they are tied by the article right? A Dutch court, a tiny activist investor group. Yes or no? So 3-2 is a kind of a mandatory pair because of the tonality. Okay. So we have our answer here 43251. 42531. Okay. 42531 is not the answer. You have made a slight mistake. And this is where the parajumbles are the worst of the question. Basically, what happens is that when you get everything right and one part of it wrong, and the entire time got wasted. Okay. Now before I reveal the correct answer, let's go ahead and examine your answer, Mamba. So 2531 you are going for. No, see, my point was 3 and 2 is a pair. You have to identify that. 3 and 2 is a pair. Why? Because a Dutch court, a tiny activist. Same tonal examples. Right? So you have to identify 3, 2. Right? All right, let me show you the correct answer now. 43251 is the right answer. 1 being the confirmation of 4. This was kind of a difficult one. You can take a picture of the question, right? Series of examples. Here we go. The next question. Okay, this one is easy. Mamba, go ahead. Just give me the right answer quickly. This one is damn easy, all right? Okay. Let us go ahead and identify the first line. I think you have read it all, right? So you will start with 51342. Okay. I fear I'm in bad books. 1, halfway through the Zoom interview, narration, perfect. 3, its barcode glows in the fading light. Wonderful. The main problem. 4, it's too polite to say anything, but he cannot be thrilled. And then finally, after all, wonderful. Good spice. Go for the next one. I think this one needs no explanation. Yes. What can be my first line? When there are 4 options, it's better to try to find the first line directly. The first line, you have only 2 realistic options, 1 versus 3, correct? Because 3, 2, 4, 1. Brilliant. Good spice, you are at the top of your game, looks like. Wonderful. 3, 2, 4, 1, guys, is the right answer. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, this one. Between 1 versus 3, 3 was a better starter, right? Okay. Wonderful. Go for this. Look at the tense. Every sentence is in present tense here, right? So either specific to general or general to specific. Wood spice. That is exactly the right answer. Brilliantly done. So let us quickly, for others, let's explain this. This one is a bit tricky. On the hypothetical day, the world stops shopping. So there is a hypothetical day being spoken about. Carbon emissions plummet. Plummet means go down. The skies turn a deeper blue, and with no ads polluting smartphone screens, our minds become as clear as the bottle-free oceans in which whales swim merrily. There's also chaos. So this was a very nice, beautiful picture, and then you have got a picture which is negative. There is also chaos. Shops shut, production lines grind to a halt, right? Then you take a general position. The global economy nosedives so severely that it makes 2008 recession seem like a blip. This is kind of an explanation of one further. And fourth being your conclusion. The only thing fantastical about his vision is the time frame rather than seizing all shopping overnight, he thinks we should. In reality, restructure society over several years to support a sustained reduction in the amount we consume. Fourth is kind of difficult to understand in the scheme of things. Rather than trying to understand, you should go for fourth being the overly generalized version. So you can just put it at the end. In parajumbles, it's very important to note this, guys. Not every connection you will understand in a very deeper analytical fashion, but you have to have a general idea, because this is not RC. You are not supposed to get deep into the meanings of the author here, right? Okay, dokes. Let's go for the next one. Go for this, guys. Journalistic writing always mostly depends on some sort of a report. First line should be clear, I think. Okay, Spice says 24315. So Spice, I would say that it's partially correct, but you got the starter wrong. So why did you get the starter wrong is the question. Last week, the Met Office revealed that there was now more than, I think there's a cursor on top, right? So that might have played a part. Sorry about that. Okay. Last week, the Met Office revealed that there was now more than 40% chance the annual average global temperature would reach 1 point blah blah blah. This kind of is, don't you think, too specific under the current situation? Like you have got Fourth, which is such a general situation, Britain, the entire nation. Okay, let me give you this much hint. Fourth is the first sentence. Okay. Britain is failing to protect its vulnerable citizens from the threat of intensifying heat waves. Health experts warned last week, because this cannot be the conclusion if such a specific situation is being discussed. Fourth is the first line. Four, 2, 3, 1, 5. Okay. Let me tell you, this is totally wrong. No, this is totally wrong. I mean, not even partially correct. So let us discuss this. Okay. Fourth, Britain is failing to protect its vulnerable citizens. Now, you have to analyze one thing very clearly here. The word could be triggered. This could be some sort of a warning in option one, as you can see. Thousands of preventable deaths could be triggered every year because simple measures to keep houses and care homes cool have not been implemented. Now, where? Britain, of course. So we are talking about national level data here, correct? So you can see a commonality, a general specific between 4 and 1, right? So 4.1 is your starter. And then what will you do? As global heating worsens and heat waves become more frequent, the problem is likely to worsen significantly unless urgent action is taken. They say. They say can be taken from one. Who says? Not one, four, I think. Experts, health experts. Okay. So I think the answer from here will be pretty clear. Answer is 41352. Right? 41352. So if you identify 4 as the first line, then 1 3, right? No, 413 is kind of a separation here. And then 5 2 is kind of your separation. Why 5 2? Those most likely to suffer include the very young, the elderly, and the people suffering from chronic conditions. Last week, the Met Office revealed that there was now a more than 40% chance that this industrial levels at a time greenhouse emissions from factories this, and cars continue unabated. Now the point is this statistic. Why is this statistic there? To go ahead and exemplify 4.2, 4.135. Okay, statistic will be coming at the end here because there is no other place you can put second in, right? The Met Office revealed, the MET meteorological office or something, I feel, meteorological data, climate data, right? Where will you put this statistic? When you can't put somewhere something, when you can't fit something in context, it's usually the end. Remember this in parasymbol questions. Okay. Let us move on to the next one. Go for this. Good advice. You have a very interesting name. Okay, this one should be pretty easy. What do you think? First line is pretty easy. All of them have got the pronoun he, so don't waste your time looking for references. I mean, not all of them, but yeah, 2, 3, 4, 1. So, okay, Mukesh, I will tell you that you are 90% there. The first line is second. Brilliant. Second is the first line. Okay, Mukesh, think about the position of third, basically. It's very like this is where most mistakes happen. The mispositioning of one of the sentences. Yes, fruit spice. 2413 is the right answer. Now, why is that? Quickly, we will go over it. Shopping has been cast as positive, but he wants us to like live on the discomfort. Okay. In his hypothetical model, explanation of what he wants us to do, he applies a 25% reduction in consumption, a figure modest enough to be possible, dramatic enough to be earth shattering, and while he will not specify a figure when discussing what a real world effort should be, something in his ballpark might well be the goal. So we are identifying what is he suggesting. 2 4. One, negation or a further explanation of 4. That does not mean fewer physical things. It is also less electricity, right? Electricity and impact. Final impact is 3. If you want a rule of thumb for how much impact you are having as a consumer, the best one is this, right? Kind of a difficult one, but 2413, I think it's pretty clear after you have identified 4 1, which is pretty easy. 2 as the first liner. The only question remains where to place 3. Correct? You have to think about that before you decide. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Guys, solve this question. I'm going to be back in 2. So what looks like my first option here? Sorry. So fourth looks like my first option, right? Why? And four and five is a mandatory pair here, right? Because two looks like, okay, one more thing. There might be some vocab issues in this question. So let me quickly go over the vocab issues. Corporeal goal. What does this corporeal goal mean? The word corporeal means anything related to body. Okay. So in Silicon Valley, immortality is sometimes elevated to the status of a corporeal goal. Right. So physical, so immortality is basically so the statement is trying to convey that people actually want to live till the end of the earth and the universe. Right. I mean, people actually want to live with their bodies. It's not that somebody's name will be remembered or something like that. No, no, no. It is sometimes believed that the status of the immortality is a corporeal goal, bodily survival. Okay. That the body will survive. So second might have been my very good starter here. But after second, I don't have much context in the question. If I start with second. Second must be my example of something. Right. Wood spice. Mukesh, I hope you are not doing. Shall I reveal the answer? Because Wood Spice has answered the question. Perfect. 45312 is the right answer. So 4 and 5 were your pairs, right? That was pretty clear, I think. 1, 2 is your pair, 2 being a very good end, right? And 3 is the connector between this 4, 5, 1, 2. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. Wait, 45312 is not the answer. 21 is the answer. You got one small mistake. Okay, no. Yeah, the answer is 21, not 12. Good twice. Okay, I hope it's pretty clear. Why is 1 the ender, not 2? Let's understand this. In Silicon Valley, immortality is sometimes elevated to the status of a corporeal goal. Plenty of big names in big tech have sunk funding into ventures to solve the problem of death, immortality, death, right? As if it were just an upgrade to your smartphone's operating system. So the point is one explaining two or two explaining one? Which spice? What do you think? Is one explaining two or two explaining one? And two connects with three or one connects with three is the question. If you read 3, but a literal expression of this hubris is ego, superego. Okay, hubris, ego, resonates in some corners of the world, especially in the technology industry. Now I'm giving examples. This ego, and what ego is that? Silicon Valley immortality. And then final example. So 3 to 1 is general to specific. I think 3 is the most general, 1 is the most specific. Wood spice, is it clear? Can we move on? 2 will connect, 1 would end it. Yes, that's the right answer. Correct. But did you understand the explanation for the same? Why 2, 1 is the ender? Because 3 to 1 is a general to specific. Did you understand it? 3 is the most general. Why is 3 the most general? Hubris, ego. When I have ego, superego, right, then Silicon Valley, immortality, then the example of that hubris. Immortality is nothing but a corporeal goal. And then how is it a corporeal goal? Big names, plenty of big names. Okay. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. one mandatory pair so you have directly in the very beginning. 5-1 chronological connection. Previous, now, however, right? The question is, what is the starter? Can you guys give me the starter? First, give me the starter here. It's pretty clear. Okay. So the first line is very, very clear. The first line is option 2 is the first line. Wonderful. Now, just one small error you have. Let me give you a hint, Good Spice. In 25143, you have gotten most of the pairs correct, but the chronology is wrong. Okay. Check once more. Sorry, guys. So 2 is the starter. That was brilliant. Very good. Because nothing else can start. The point is, fourth is an example of what? Laboratory grown organoids and the developments. So immediately after 2, you will take 4 now. Laboratory grown organoids, tiny cellular structures that mimic an organ's anatomy and functions, are becoming increasingly useful in medical research. How? How useful? Such micromodels of the brain, lungs, and other organs have been around for years, but creating them for bone tissue has proved uniquely difficult. Now, it has basically, from the general idea to difficulty, uniquely difficult. Why is it uniquely difficult? Right? Why is it unique? Bone stands apart because it's different cell types. You have got a direct connection between 4 and 3. Right? Then you will take 5-1 and first understand 5-1, what are they doing? Previous organoid attempts have failed to capture how human bone cells form in parallel with this matrix and interact with it. Where is the matrix? Extracellular matrix, option 3. So 3-5 again become a mandatory pair. Previous, now 1 becomes a mandatory pair. So your entire answer becomes 2, 4, 3, 5, 1. Now I understand when you look at the answer, it almost seems like commonsensical. Oh, right? It was there right in front of me. But while solving it, you did not see those connections, right? First type of connections you should seek are the word repetitions. Okay, so what kind of word repetitions you had here? If I talk about 5-1, previous now, time, not word repetition, but chronology. Then 3-5 was a very important one. Matrix, matrix. Right? 5 has got the word matrix. Third has also got the word matrix, extracellular matrix. Right? 4-3, bone, bone. 4 is talking about bone, uniquely difficult. And 3 talks about bone, repetition. So these repetitions would give you the linkage to solve the entire structure. Okay, let's move on. Okay, you can make 2 mandatory pairs over here and then see which one is better. That's the best strategy. Okay, give me the 2 mandatory pairs. Brilliant. Why not 4-2-3-1? Wood Spice? Because there is no context for some former influences. 3 is the obvious starter, right? Perfect. 3-1-4-2 is the right answer, guys. Let's go for this. Okay, I hope you have read about these people. John Locke, Popper. Popper is basically Karl Popper in option 3, as you can see. There was a cat passage on Popper, right, in 2023. Karl Popper. Read. These are very interesting people, guys. You should read more. Okay, it's very interesting. Go for it. Okay, but my bad. This is not exactly Karl Popper. This is just Pink Popper. Okay. Okay, that's a good question, Wood Spice. That's exactly what I am planning to do in the next few sessions because I could not find it. I mean, if I talk about an ideology, let's say existentialism, it's a very common philosophical ideology. Uh, and there are few authors I should know about in a temporal time chronological fashion. For example, existentialism begins with Kierkegaard, right? And Kierkegaard was the only existentialist who believed in God. He was a theistic existentialist, right? Then after Kierkegaard, we get Albert Camus. After Albert Camus, we get Immanuel Kant. So, and these are all, it's all 14th century to 20th century proceeding in a very linear fashion. And they have redefined. I mean, if I talk about uh, Dostoevsky, they have redefined literature and philosophy in a very fundamental manner. So and the cat passages will mention them like anything, like fruits. Every cat passage, at least in the philosophical domain, you will see. So if you are comfortable with these ideas from the very beginning, even before you write the text, it's good for you. So source-wise, I will quickly mention, but it's not consolidated. No. If you are asking whether it's all consolidated properly, I'm going to do that in the coming sessions. But in order to reach such people, you can look at aeon.co and psych. Okay. So aeon.co is a website where you can like get such articles. You can get, there's a long process that I can tell you. Go to Wikipedia, list down all the philosophers. It will start from Socrates, Plato, and blah, blah, blah. Then search the same terms on aeon.co and read their articles. But this is long run and you don't exactly get to the point here. I will tell you how CAT tests you. So I mentioned Karl Popper, right? Now this Popper is not exactly that Popper, right? So Karl Popper is known for giving us scientific falsifiability. Very counterintuitive. So the entire thing is, if I ask you what is scientific, you will say whatever can be verified, right? Popper's definition was, if anything is scientific, there should be falsifiability in it. That means we should be able to prove it wrong, not right. Now, this is a very counterintuitive understanding. Cat will suddenly give you this idea, and you will be at your wits' end to understand how can something be scientific if I can prove it wrong. But that is the hallmark of science, right? I can make very tall claims like the universe has no end, maybe. No, universe has no end, maybe. We don't know. Maybe dark matter exists. But how will you verify such a claim? We have not been able to spot that dark matter. So there is no falsifiability in this claim, so it must be wrong, according to Popper's definition. So having a prior knowledge in these aspects is very, very useful. Right now, Wikipedia to Aeon is the only way. But I'm planning to take sessions, philosophy, psychology, stuff like that, categorized properly and consolidated. Right now, you can solve this question, bro. Go ahead. Good spice, what do you think is the answer? Look for word repetitions. One I can spot, 4-1, approach. Unable to connect the theme. If you are unable to connect the theme, then try to connect the word. Forget about the theme. Themes will be complex. You have to be very good with the complex themes so that you avoid them. Right? You don't have to understand everything. I told you, no. Look for word connections. You have got 4 and 1. Do you see any patterns getting repeated? Approaches. right? So now when you read 4-1 together, you will get a better understanding instead of trying to connect from the very beginning, right? So 4-1 is your starter. This much I'm giving you the hint. 4-1 is your starter. 4-1 is your starter, not 1-4. Okay. So let's solve this question together. Leave it. I think you're tired. All right. So the answer to this question is 4132. Okay. Now understand it. A widely taken approach is what's known as psychological continuity view of the self. So there is a view of the self called psychological continuity, where we say that the self is conscious with self-awareness and personal memories. Summarize: psychological continuity view, self is conscious and self-aware. Sometimes these approaches, what approaches? Psychological continuity approaches, frame the self as a combination of the mind and the body. Rene Descartes, very important philosopher from cat perspective. Rene Descartes is known for what, guys? Rene Descartes is known for objective realism and dialectic materialism. Very important philosopher. Sometimes these approaches frame the self as a combination of mind and body, as Rene Descartes did, or as primarily or solely consciousness. So 4-1. I also can't understand it. Just leave it. 4-1 approaches. Simple. John Locke's Prince Pauper thought experiment, wherein Prince's consciousness and all his memories are transferred into the body of a cobbler, is an illustration of the idea. What idea? The mind-body debate. So 1-3. Philosophers have devised numerous subsequent thought experiments. Now, what subsequent thought experiments? Prince Pauper, then subsequent 4-1-3-2. Right? Okay, we will do one more question before we leave you tonight. Go for this. This last question you have to get correct with 5 after such a tremendous performance today. Okay, take your time. Just one small mistake and a 0 and a -2 minutes instead of a +3. That's what CAT is. You have to be very careful with the parajumble questions, guys. The last 1-5 pair is wrong, Mamba. So it's not 1-5, it's 5-1. Now, in your chat message, you explained to me why is 5-1 better than 1-5. You focused on the most accurate way, and it sounds such a good conclusion, right? But before making the choice, you should have taken some more time. Sorry, to learn more about these impacts, you focused on that. Scientists at the Smithsonian National Museum, this. So the most accurate way, and then further, you focused on that. But that's not the answer. Why? Tell me. Okay, so let's understand it. Climate change in the ocean has made a splash with people who want to protect marine animals like fishes and warming oceans. But the problem goes beyond endangered species and threatened ecosystems. 4.2. 3. It also affects people who rely on fish not only for food but also for income. So endangered species, but also people it affects. Now, if I talk about impact, right, we are listing down the impact in 2 and 3. So one will follow now to learn more about these impacts. So scientists at Smithsonian National Museum are collecting data. And now after collecting, you will go for gathering and analyzing. Correct? Wood Spice? The data. So far, so good. So this makes sense, I know. But the problem is what happened when you were solving. This makes sense, right? The explanation that I gave. Does the explanation make sense? First, you will collect the data and then you will gather and analyze the data, right? To learn more about these impacts, scientists at the Smithsonian's National Museum are collecting data. So first collection happens, then gathering and analyzing happens, right? Okay, no, you don't understand it. So let me once more read this. To learn more about, right? But when you were solving it originally, the point that I want to come to is that when you were solving it originally, what happened was in the beginning pairs, you focused very well. 4, 2, 3. So that was also easy. You know, psychologically, it gives you a boost. Oh my God, I got the 3 in a jiffy. And then they put the difficult stuff, which you have to think more on, analyze more on. And that's how our mind ends up making more mistakes in the latter part of the parajumble. Okay. So it's very important that after you have come to your answer, like 4, 2, 3, 1, 5, you came to, sorry, 5, 1, you came to, you should question it once from your end. That, okay, is my answer correct? Can I disprove it from my end? That might send you to in a spiral also. So don't overdo it. But at least once you should question, is my pairing okay? Are there any faults that I can find with this pairing? Right? I mean, if I do 5-1, then how is one is creating a new idea? And what new idea? Smithsonian Marine Station are collecting data to understand it. Where fishes live today and how these environments are changing, right? And gathering and analyzing this information is the most accurate way to protect the fish and the fishing communities. So gathering and analyzing is the summary of the first. So this silly mistake is what I'm trying to avoid in CAT, remember. Because although there is no negative marking, but parajumbles are very time consuming. On an average, I had 20 questions today, but I could only finish what? 16 of them? For every question, I had to give 2 to 2.5 minutes. right? So paranumbers are time-heavy questions, and after all that effort, prone to errors. At every turn, there is a chance you can make an error. So it's important that if you're investing the time, if you're not investing time, then do it under 1 minute. Finish and go. Okay. But if you have decided that you will invest the time in the parasem question, then I believe that you should not make a 1551 error towards the end. Right? Good Spice? I hope it's clear. Okay, docs. So guys, I'm gonna take your leave at this point in time. I hope I recover tonight and meet you for a wonderfully energized session tomorrow. And we will discuss the philosophers, the listing and categorization, everything in the next session. Okay, I'm gonna create a PPT for the same. All right, chalo guys, bye-bye. See you. My pleasure. Study well. Take some cats. Okay. I hope you're already doing that.